e que ele não é português. Irei fazer a moderação da mesa em inglês. A intervenção do Agostinho Sousa irá também ser em inglês, mas a do Dr. Francisco Jorge, que infelizmente ainda não chegou, mas a partir de irá chegar, irá ser em português. Portanto, a partir de agora iremos mudar a língua. So, good morning to everyone. We are introducing the panel on global health. And just a short notice on what global health is. I know that maybe some of you might be wondering why global health. We talk in our medical schools a lot about public health, and it's a fact that we currently do not have an established curricular program or approach to what is global health. So that's the biggest aim of this panel, is to give you a perspective on what is currently the discussions that are being held internationally in what comes to health, and what action can you actually have as medical students regarding global health topics, which are topics related to health that affect everyone in the world. So I would like to invite Agostinho Sousa to start with his presentation. Agostinho is currently the president of the International Federation of Medical Students Associations, the IFMSA, and he was president of the ICWA's Medical Students Union 2 years ago, and for 2 years he was also the liaison officer for medical education issues on IFMSA. And so I hope that you enjoy, and thank you so much for your attention.
Oh, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to start this morning. I hope that everyone is awake after yesterday's night, that I hope everyone enjoyed. I will start this presentation with great pride. It's really a pride to be here and to explain to you a topic that rarely was explained to me. Once I was in ANEM and when I was in ICWA's, since this topic seemed so far away, so there that we don't really understand. We don't understand why we need to study about things that are happening the other side of the world. But I will try to enlighten you a little bit more about why it's important for you, at least to have this perspective. And the first question that we have to put to ourselves is, who are we? And to understand that we are part of a global community that, even if you don't want, you belong to it. And you also have to understand that changes that are happening in the other side of the world can impact you. Situations like this, that are the process in Hong Kong, can destabilize the economy and can, for example, create problems with the prices of oil, and then will impact the prices of your products and so on. We are no longer little clusters in the world. We are all connected. But I will come to this picture later. Another thing that we also have to understand is, like, we have physiological needs, we have specific things that are common to all of us. Like, we travel, we have, like, relations, we go to weddings, and we die one day. And these are the kind of things that are common to all the human beings in the world that started a long time ago. And we, in the beginning, the communities were all together. The global health was almost only in Africa, with a small communities of humans. But then we spread out all over the world, and we were isolated for thousands and thousands of years, until globalization started. And someone has any idea when globalization started? Okay, it's a little bit to discuss like this, but it started with one specific civilization, that were the Portuguese. And why say this? It's usually said that the fathers of global health are the Portuguese, because for the good and for the worse, they started to create trade. This is called the Namban trade, that is the trade established with the Japanese in the 16th century. And with trade, we also started to trade diseases, and we also started to trade things that didn't exist in other areas of the world. And you can have the example of the huge epidemics that happen in the New World because were diseases brought by the Europeans that didn't exist before. So global health is not a thing that started 50 or 60 years ago. It's something that at least exists for more than 400 years. And we can even consider, for example, the Black Death also as an example of partially global health. We also had huge pandemics, such as the Spanish flu in 1918, or the HIV/AIDS that still takes its toll all over the world. And then it was also the influenza A in 2009 that was generates a lot of discussions, and this is the most recent one, and is Ebola. And Ebola started in a little community in Africa, and right now you can see that the world is now worried about what happened in a little community in Africa and can spread out all over the world. If you go to airports, if you go to public spaces, you will see that there is a huge fear that this can be spread out. However, the risk is not as big as a lot of people may understand. But there are campaigns, for example, that IFMSA works with, and I will explain a little bit this later, that works with, and there are medical students that are working in this field right now in things that for us completely far away, but they are on the field trying to promote health in the population to understand how to stop this disease. And this brought us to who is responsible for coordinate all this process, who is responsible for understanding global health worldwide. And we have one global organization, that is the World Health Organization, that is the major responsible. There are a lot more of NGOs and other governmental organizations that support this work, but they are the main responsibles. And the image in the left, now it's, I hope that someone in the audience can know. Who wants to go to general medicine, family medicine in here? Raise the arm. Okay, only 2 people. Okay, so it will be important for you to know the image that is on my right, on your left. That was the Alma Ata conference that happened a long time ago in the 70s, and it defined how primary health care was important to the population. And it was defined as the shift from hospital-based patient care to community-based care. And this was a big, big conference. And then on my right, on your right, there is the World Health Assembly that defines the policies on health annually and to all over the world. There are other present discussions that is really important for you to know. It's like you may think that doesn't affect so much Portugal, but they affect. And they are, the image on your left is about the 8 Millennium Development Goals that were established in 2000 to define what will be the priorities of the countries to improve human conditions. But right now, these goals are expiring, and we are entering the post-2015 development agenda. So in September 2015, there will be a huge summit in New York, and where IFMSA will be present, and we'll debate what will be the priorities at world level on health, education, economics, and so on. We also have an important role on discussing social determinants of health. And we like a lot to discuss how to control the finances in a hospital or how to define sustainability or a specific clinic. But we have to understand that everything on health is interconnected with other social factors as economics, employability, and cultural values and so on. And all of these are bring together, and all of those factors impact health. One of the things that IFMSA is working right now, IFMSA is in a working group to start working a global book about social determinants for health that probably you will read in 2 years from now in your medical schools. We also were part of a letter that was created for more than 20 global entities that were signed to the Secretary of the United Nations about the importance of social determinants for health. We already received a reply, but as they said, it's really important to work with member states in order to create any impact, because even the United Nations has limited action on these aspects. And there is also the non-communicable diseases that are related with diabetes, that are related with cardiovascular problems. And there is that image that in Africa, everyone still dies with malaria, with HIV/AIDS, and that only in Europe or only in the US, people are affected with these problems, and that is not true anymore. The developing countries are getting a lot of economical power. The shift of power in the world is shifting from Europe and North America more and more to Middle East and Southeast Asia, and we are seeing that even those countries are changing. You can see that in 1990, the volume of non-communicable diseases related deaths were 47%, and in 2020 will be 69%. The world is changing, and it's changing really, really fast. What you learn in school and what you're learning right now in medical schools will not be true anymore in 5 to 10 years. And this is really changing, and it's really important to keep updated because the things are really changing really quickly. Just a quick notice, there are also very specific defined goals for a strategy that will be implemented in the next 7 years on how to reduce non-communicable diseases that are being implemented by the World Health Organization. And now I will talk about one thing that everyone likes to discuss, at least in Portugal, that is human resources for health. If we are creating too many doctors, what will be the impact in the society, and so on. I want to start to present to you. I will not go deeply because that will be the session in this afternoon. I will just to present you some studies and some reports that I mentioned briefly yesterday. There is this study of the World Bank that shows up that more doctors don't necessarily lead to better care. And it's a very dangerous study because it shows that by increasing human resources in a country, mainly with lack of overseeing the quality, that is something that is happening all over the world, there will be an impact on patient safety in the society. There is also other studies that show up that if doctors don't have a permanent position, or I will put that in the other side, if they don't have that job and a permanent position, they will be more they will suffer more burnouts, and that will also create an impact in patient care. And this is really something that we should look into, not in economical values saying that everyone should have opportunities for everything. We should see also how this impacts the patient, the care on the society. And there are other reports that also advise to have a correct planning, and we are working in those reports, and that there is the need for needs continuous monitoring and adaptation according to the changing environment and involving demand and supply conditions. These are international reports. However, Portugal doesn't do this very well since 1998. And this is related with what? This is also related with expectations of the students. Because I understand the argument. In the last 8 years, we were connected with that, saying like, okay, everyone should have the possibility of being a doctor. The problem is we should also have the possibility of having a job. So one thing is also connected to the other. You cannot sell a principle and then you go and you want to be what you want for your life, and then you say, no, sorry, like it now is up to you. We provide you one chance, and then it's up to you to find the solution. Okay, now I have to wait for 2 seconds. Okay, now it's there. And just to show up like about mobility, if you look this is a graph about the movement of professionals in Europe, and this is the most mobile professions between 2007 and 2014. And if you see, the two on the left are doctors of medicine and nurses. These are already the biggest, the most mobile professions, and this is how they are spread out. This is the countries that usually issue the qualifications, and these that are majorly Germany, Italy, Greece, and so on. And then you see the host countries, and you see that majorly the host countries are United Kingdom, Germany, Switzerland, Norway, Sweden, and then there are 27% the other countries. And we are also studying the situation because we clearly see that mobility inside of the European Union is not uniform. There's clearly a movement from here to specific, 5 specific countries. There is all of these discussions. This was a short perspective about something that could be talked about for 2 or 3 hours. But I want more to talk about the role. What is your role? And this gentleman in this picture is one of the most amazing people that already exist in the world. That is Machiavelli. He was creator of the prince, and he created a lot of problems in Italy in the 16th century. Created so many problems that even the word Machiavellic comes from him. It was created by the Catholic Church because he was being a huge critic of them by that time. And one thing that you must understand is, and I understand that very, very well, when you want to create something new, or if you want to change something, you have to understand that there is already someone in the system that is taking benefit from it. It can be, for example, tobacco industry, it can be in like alcohol industry, or it can be, for example, it's very good to have more doctors because then you receive less payments, so there's people that will pay you less and receive more money. There is always someone that is profiting from a system. But it's also our role to defend the rights and to defend our perspective and to try to impose a change. And where global health starts. And I will start to make a quick question. Who sleeps more or who sleeps 8 hours during the exam period in here? Please raise the arm. We still have some people. Okay. Who considers in here, who takes 3 meals per day during the exam period? Okay, let's do the other way around. Who doesn't? 3 meals per day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And another last question. Who feels tired for being a medical student? Okay, so what I wanted to say with this is global health starts with our own health. Starts individual level. And usually one of the things that we hear between us is we say things to the patients and probably we are the worst example sometimes. And that's one of the things that you must know, that health, global health starts with us. And we also, this is a specific advice that, as I said 30 seconds ago, I don't follow. That is, we have to look for our own health because we have to take care of the health of the others. And we have an essential role on defining global health. And the answer is yes. And why is yes? I'll explain step by step. First, because we are already expected to have a role in the society. We are already expected from being a doctor to take a role. You don't see very well what is written there, like it's what my friends think I do, what my family thinks I do, what society thinks I do, that is to steal money from the patients, What I wish I did that was to take a vacation in Algarve for at least 2 weeks. What I think I do that I am the best and I will be the best doctor in the hospital or in the community, and what I actually do is sometimes pray a lot so I can pass the exam and finish my medical studies. And there are also specific roles that are already assigned. One of that I will focus, this is the CNEM that specifics the roles of a medical expert. I will focus only on one, that is health advocates. That is explained that all the doctors need to have a role on the advancement of health and well-being of patients and communities. And it's also for us to have an important role in the advancement of education, because then education improves the medical art, and if we improve the medical art, we improve patient care. One problem. We are seen like this. We are seen like the little babies in the room that, okay, you will understand when you arrive to my position that this is more difficult than you think, and it's not la la la, and na na na, and we are seen like this. And this is one of the biggest problems that youth and students are facing, and we are not like this. Who in here can vote for the parliament? Raise the arm. Everyone, right? Almost everyone. Probably there is someone with 17. You are considered citizens. You have a responsibility to the society. You can pick the parliament, you can pick the president. You have already a voice in the society. Saying that because you are an university student that you don't have any rights, that's a lie. That's a totally lie. You're adult as the other people that are in leadership positions. And according to the constitution, the Portuguese constitution, you have the same rights as everyone. We act a lot at international level in trying to change this situation. In Portugal, it's a little bit more easy when we start to talk about student rights in Kuwait or about student rights in Hong Kong. That can be a little bit more tricky. And there are some barriers. That is, we have our teachers that say you should be strong in your positions and you should change the things. But when you start to criticize them, you say like, you are creating me problems, why are you so annoying, and so on. And then there is another thing that I will focus in here. This is the ladder of participation, and there is one specific here, one part that is called tokenism. That is a disease that is happening right now on youth participation. That is one of the worst things that can happen. That is to ask for your opinion, saying that your opinion was heard and take notice, and then they just ignore it. They say, we want to involve you, we want to give you a place in the board, you are so important for us, but it's just to look nice in the picture. And this is happening a lot. The only way to get really citizen power is to build up partnerships, to transfer powers, and to give control to some of the topics. And also, this is really important, have the responsibility to do something. Because usually also one of the problems of student organizations is to take the responsibility and then they don't do anything. And then there is one thing that really, really annoys me, that when they say we are the future. And you have a responsibility. You are like, no. We are all responsible. Even I am in this side, even the people that in the panel, everyone is responsible. One thing that usually older people told to us is, you will be responsible for the future. And I say, when I have the opportunity, that's not true. You are in leadership positions, you have more influence than us, you can create a faster change than us. So if you are providing this message to us, just do it. And that doesn't happen. It's very easy to transfer the responsibility to youth and to students. Very easy. And when the people say that, please say back, you are the dean of the faculty. You are the minister, or you are the Secretary of State. You are the responsible. We will be responsible one day. But right now, you that you are talking, you are the responsible. And how to take an action on this? Always start at local level. Annoy the president of your student union, Associação de Estudantes ou Núcleo. Annoy him, try to participate. If you really think that you have a role in the society, if you really think that you can improve the health system, join a student union. And this were some of the pictures that were from my faculty. I joined IECVS in 2008, a long time ago. And then there is probably some of you were there, but probably the majority weren't. That was this action that was in front of Ministry of Health. It took a while, but we saw that it was important to take an action. However, there is a lot of work still to be done since this action. And now I will talk about the international level and about IFMSA. Probably the majority of you know IFMSA because of exchanges. And I want to go to Slovenia, or I want to go to China, I want to do a mobility program. So the majority of you know because of that. Important thing, I am one example. I didn't know anything about IFMSA until 4 years ago. And I did an exchange, and then I started to understand what IFMSA does. And to understand how important is IFMSA, ANEM was created to be a member of IFMSA. That was the main goal. ANEM was not called ANEM. Back then it was called PORMSIG. So when you see the logo that you are in your badges, you will see that there is ANEM in big letters and that some small letters in there, because it was to participate in global process. And we are one of the biggest and oldest student organizations in the world, representing more than 500,000 students worldwide. And we are members of the United Nations system, and we are also members of the World Health Organization network. And we do two major things. We do projects, and this can be considered a project, that is trainings, capacity building events, congresses, and so on. And then there is action on advocacy. It's better to translate representação. And we act, and the image on, the image on the left is from the World Health Assembly, where we had a delegation, almost 40 people that go there and advocate for the topics that are selected by the national member organizations, or one of them is ANEM. This was the first global forum on human resources for health that talked about the planning of doctors, nurses, and so on all over the world. On the right is the Prince Maidal Award Conference, but that's more another discussion. And also, I will give some concrete examples on how we act. This is really important because Alberto will be responsible for that. Alberto is the regional coordinator, IFMSA regional coordinator for Europe. And he will be responsible, for example, to work in these two main areas. That is the World Health Organization Regional Office for Europe. That is to provide internships for medical students to go to Copenhagen to work there for 3 to 6 months, or to define the policies that will, European policies that will define the Portuguese policies, because a lot of what is defined in Portugal doesn't come from Portugal, comes from here. And we work in here because it's easier to work in here than sometimes in our government. And then we have the joint action on health workforce planning and forecasting that will talk about the problems that we discussed 5 minutes ago about mobility of doctors all over Europe, and how the situation in Portugal affects the situation in Bulgaria, and how the situation in Lithuania can affect the situation in the UK. Quick example, Croatia lost almost 20 to 25% of their doctors after joining the EU. Bulgaria is losing 10% of the doctors every year. Romania produces more doctors than they need, but they don't stay there because they migrate to Germany. And if we see all the currents, then there will not be places to work in Europe in the next 10 years. Just a quick example about what was done in the last month. This picture is from the World Health Summit. I had the chance to speak in the open ceremony to warn everyone in the audience about what is really happening right now in the world. About climate change, about human resources again. And we also have important news. We'll be part of a working group to define the policies of WHO on non-communicable diseases. We will join the drafting group of the e-book on the social determinants for health. We managed to enter in the coordination of a world group to fight HIV/AIDS. We managed a lot of things this month. And these little things will have huge impact on your life. Just finishing, I just give you a quick advice. If you don't believe what I'm saying is true, you can always join IFMSA on Facebook, Twitter, and on the website and search for more information there. And a final short message, because I already spoke too much. It's a lie, a complete lie that nothing can change. It's a lie when the people say it's impossible to do anything. It's a completely lie. Today is a really, really important day because in this day, we celebrate 25 years of the fall of the Berlin Wall. If you read some historical articles from this day, nobody was expecting the Berlin Wall to fall in that day. And these kind of events are happening all over the world, and we don't even notice. I will make you a question. What is the historical event that is happening right now? That may be a historical event or not. Right now. That affects Portugal very deeply. A volunteer. No one? Catalonia voted on the referendum for independence. It's happening right now in Catalonia, and sometimes we don't understand that history is happening right now. If there is a vote yes, we don't know the consequences that that may bring to Iberia, to Portugal, Spain. This one thing is important, history is happening right now. Another important thing is we will celebrate on November 17 the International Students' Day, 75 years. This lad in the picture, its name was Jan Opletal. And why is so important? In November 11, the Nazi troops invaded Prague. And they closed almost all the schools in there. But the students revolt. They revolt against the occupation of the Nazi army, and there was a specific group of students that were medical students that were against the closure of the Charles University. And this specific medical student, was shot on November 11. On November 17, there was a huge reaction. It was his funeral, and there were members of academia, students, population that took a stance after the memorial. They took a stance and revolt against the Nazi army. There was an execution of at least 8 people. The majority were students for trying to defend the right to education and try to defend the right to speak. And this is remembered as the International Students' Day. The thing that will also be important, at least IFMSA is leading this process in collaboration with International Pharmaceutical Students Federation and the International Association of Dental Students. We expect in this day to create the World Healthcare Students Alliance, and also to create a common position between pharmaceutical students, dental students, and medical students. Because one thing that we must understand is if we work alone in these topics of non-communicable diseases, on the topics of human resources, we will not win. Because every time that these topics are raised, there is always the word, sorry for saying Portuguese, corporativismo. This is a problem that affects all of us, and it's really important to work together. There are more student protests that are the May 68. There is the Tiananmen Square protest that happened in '89. There is the Chilean students' winter that is still going on, started in 2011. There is Sunflower student movement that happened 6 months ago in Taiwan. And we come back to the beginning. There is also a students' movement in Hong Kong trying to provide a change to the society. I can also mention, for example, in Portugal, one quick example. What means FRA? It was I think it's Front Revolucionária Académica. Ou Forças Revolucionárias, mas é por volta disso. Isso foi criado. Sorry, I'm shifting again to Portuguese. It was academic revolutionary forces. It was during the dictatorship, the students united and stand a stance against the system of Salazar. The thing is, if you have problems right now, you will take a stance. That is the question that I leave to you. There was one sentence yesterday that was, and you have also to understand, little changes that you make can have a huge impact. This picture is from our first General Assembly in '52 in Denmark, more than 60 years ago. Right now, our General Assembly has more than 1,000 people. We have also a saying, I love the expression impossible, because when the people say impossible, it gives me more motivation to do it. And this is the motto of our organization, and this is the message that I leave to you. The impossible we do tomorrow, miracles may take a little longer. Thank you for your attention.
I'd like now to open to the floor some time for questions, if you have to Agostinho. Does anyone have questions? Agostinho, lá onde? Não. I think that maybe in the meanwhile I will make a question to Agostinho. If you could give one piece of advice to our colleagues here in this room to do something else besides our medical course, what would it be? And what would it be?
Anything you like. That's the shortest reply. When I was in ICPAS, I was member of TUN, I was member of the Comissão de Curso, I was member of the student union, so I tried to be involved as much as possible in the student life. And there is usually one thing that is said, life goes very quickly and it goes very, very quickly. And I will not say you to do the same, you do the things that you like. The best, but just don't stay and like studying. If you have huge priorities in life and you want to be a cardiologist or you have to be the dermatologist and you think you will be happy like that, I am no one to criticize you. But it's also really important to define which priorities you have in life, because every decision that you make, even if it's really, really short, it will impact you a lot. I joined, while they are there, I joined the student union while I was drinking beer outside Piolho, and there was a proposal to me to join in a cultural week, and I went to the student union the next day, and I say like I am able to help, and by a discussion at 1 a.m. I am here today. But there are a lot more factors, but that will be another long story.
Do you want to begin? Okay, so then yeah, sure.
Thank you. So just in case you want to take photos and stuff.
Okay. Thank you, Agostinho. Now I'd like to give the word to Dr. Ahmed Hankir. Dr. Ahmed Hankir is a psychiatrist, and well, very shortly, he is very well known because of a great talk that he's going to deliver us today about mental health, which is named The Wounded Healer. And why are we talking this in this panel? Because in global health, mental health is an issue that a lot of people is aware of, but it's a fact that it's not being taken into consideration in some of big discussions concerning global health. And particularly, and as Agostinho said during his presentation, mental health is a very, very important issue for medical students and for medical doctors, because we do suffer a lot, and you all raised your arm when Agostinho asked for it. So I hope that you will enjoy, and that you can take some messages back home regarding mental health. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ahmed.
Sorry. Okay.
Some of you may be disengaged. The path of the righteous man is beset on all sides by the inequities of the selfish and the tyranny of evil men. Now, blessed is he who, in the name of charity and goodwill, shepherds the weak through the valley of the darkness. For he is truly his brother's keeper, and the finder of lost children, and I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger those who attempt to poison and destroy my brother. And you will know that I am the Lord, when I lay my vengeance upon thee. I got one thing to say. King Kong ain't got shit on me. Are you guys still disengaged? I like to think there's a method in my madness. Good morning. The aims of this talk are to provide you with a brief overview on, surprise, surprise, bipolar disorder. I'm going to broach a little on stigma, describe the association between craziness and creativity, explore how autobiographical narrative is gaining a popularity among doctors who have mental health challenges. I'm going to offer you all a qualitative insight
into the mind of a medic with manic depressive illness, and I'd like to highlight the issue of mental health challenges in healthcare professionals and professional trainees. So this talk will be identifying the merits of autobiographical narrative. And so by definition, I will be making reference to myself in my own autobiographical narrative. Now, I hope you don't mind. I'm very proud of some of the goals I've achieved in my life. And I'd like to thank you all in advance for giving me this opportunity to share my experiences with you. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Diogo. It's a real pleasure and privilege to be here. Now, I stake no claim in being master of the phenomenon that has afflicted me. If in the event you experience mental distress in any of its many forms, the best recourse is to consult a GP. I can't emphasize on that enough. Can I have a show of hands if you register with a family doctor or a GP? It should be 100% in this room. And if you're not registered, please do register with a family doctor. Okay. Now, my talk will be making reference to intense experiences in my life, which may or may not evoke strong feelings and emotions. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. And unapologetically, this talk is going to be dramatic. As you may have gathered, I'm not sure if that were superfluous. Okay, so a non-systematic review of the literature was conducted. First-person narratives of doctors with mental health challenges were collated and qualitatively analyzed. And I, a Lebanese doctor specializing in academic psychiatry in England, composed my very own autobiographical narrative, describing the profound oscillations in my mood, in my attempts to illustrate the roles that psychosocial, cultural, and religious factors play in disease detection, progression, treatment, and outcome. Now, my narrative isn't going to delve so much into the neuroscience of bipolar disorder, because I think that's pretty boring, to be honest with you, and you might also come to slumber. What I want to do is convey the subjective experience of profound oscillations in moods and the effects that this can have on cognitive schema, behavior, and functioning, both occupational and social. I have utilized the tools of verse and prose in attempts to achieve those goals. This is my tribute to Night's Move thinking. The gauntlet has been thrown. Try and trace the thread in my train of thought, if you will. Ours is a world of metaphor, intrigue, fantasy, and deceit. But what is Night's Move thinking? Does anyone here in this auditorium know what Night's Move thinking is? No psychiatrists here? Do we have any chess players in the audience? Wonderful. Okay, so let's say you're playing chess, right? And your adversary claims your queen with his or her knight. And you're like, WTF? Because you never saw that move coming, did you? It was non-linear. So when you're performing a mental state examination, components include thought form and thought content. Night's Move thinking is abnormal thought form. It's like a non sequitur. There's no logical connection between the sentence I'm uttering now, for example, and the preceding sentence. Is that starting to make some sense? Now, despair not if the meaning still eludes you, because I'm going to demonstrate to you all what Knight's Move thinking is. And that's loads of fun for me, and I hope it's a lot of fun for you too. Now, I want for you to bear in mind that it's Knight's Move thinking in the context of an artistic temperament. So don't forget, I'm going to be talking about that relationship between craziness and creativity. Now, I'm going to outstretch my hand, and I dare you all to reach out and grasp it if you so will. Allow me to transport you to a different time and place. Now, there is a caveat. Before we embark on this odyssey to oblivion and beyond, you might want to fasten your seatbelts, ladies and gents, because Knight's Move thinking is a bumpy ride.
Okay, so it is, who needs a microphone? It is 7th century AD, and we are in the bazaar in the Arabian Peninsula. Merchants have traveled from far and wide to barter frankincense and silk. The marketplace is heaving with people. But wait just one moment, there's some commotion in the corner. The poet has taken to the pulpit. Bread and water do the poets have in Hakim's house, where verse and prose are lightly put to slaughter. And the bread, I swear, over there, it's thinner than the water. Open a space to lovers of poetry, to the oboe, willing and rich, patron of the arts. When the oboe invites the poet in, their joyous kith and lovers kin, where wines and cakes abound, the skills of verse are found. All revels and those songs begin, when the oboe invites the poet in. Man, free thinker! Do you imagine you alone think in this world, where life is blazing forth in all things? You are free to avail yourself of the forces you command, but the universe has gone missing from your prescriptions. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping as of someone gently rapping on my chamber door. 'Tis some visitor I muttered, tapping on my chamber door, only this and nothing more. Oh! So you think the darkness is your ally? You merely adopted the dark. I was born in it, molded by it. I didn't see the light until I was already a man. By then it was nothing but blinding to me. Your shadows betray you because they belong to me. My father's people say that at the birth of the sun and of his brother the moon, the mother died. And so the sun gave to the earth her body, from which was to spring all life. And he drew forth from her breast the stars. And the stars he threw them into the night sky to remind you of her soul. Now let me tell you something, Miriam. That a man's heart is a wretched, wretched thing. It isn't like a mother's womb. It won't bleed for you. It won't stretch to make room for you. But a of the European Enlightenment period was to inspire humankind to use their sense of reason in the exploration of the universe. Now, this period also saw the re-emergence of the same methods of thinking to study mental illness, whose sufferers had then spent more than 1,000 years as objects of fear and superstition. Now, the public mind is exposed to portrayals of psychiatry and madness in literature, film, and the media. And these are powerful influences in shaping our individual and collective perceptions. Now, historically, a stigma was a scar on the skin of ancient Greek criminals. It was a sign to all that these people were unsafe, unclean, and unwanted. Stigma still persists today in the attitudes towards those who have mental health challenges. We see a fundamental divide between the psychotic mind and the asthmatic lung, as if those who experience mental health challenges do so out of their own making, and as such, do not deserve the same kind of empathy we would ordinarily show to someone with a condition like cancer, for example. This is Trisha Goddard. She's a British television personality. And she was diagnosed with both breast cancer and depression. She described both experiences as horrible. But with breast cancer, people ran towards her with open arms and hugged her. With depression, people ran away. When she was diagnosed with breast cancer, she was inundated with get well soon cards. The moment news leaked out that she was admitted into a psychiatric ward following a mental breakdown, not a peep, and certainly no cards. Stigma. This is Dr. Daksha Emson. She was a brilliant British psychiatrist with bipolar affective disorder, and she tragically killed herself and her baby daughter Freya during a psychotic episode. An independent inquiry into her death concluded that she was the victim of stigma in the National Health Service. Succinctly put, stigma is killing people. Now, despite this perception that medical students and doctors should be invincible, the reality is that mental health challenges are overrepresented in this population. 25% of doctors in England experience depressive symptoms. 400 doctors die from suicide every year in the US alone. Now, mental health problems may develop early on in medical school. However, doctors and medical students have low levels of help seeking for their own psychiatric issues, often only presenting to mental health services once a crisis arises. Now, fear of exposure to stigmatization is a crucial factor contributing to secrecy and symptom concealment. A recent study identified stigma to be a barrier to the use of mental health services by 30% of medical students experiencing depression. The 2008 Stigma Shout survey of almost 4,000 people using mental health services and carers revealed that healthcare professionals are a common source of stigma reported by people with mental illness. And would anyone like to volunteer? Who do you think? Which specialty, rather,
is the most stigmatizing specialty towards mental health challenges. Psychiatry! Would you believe it? Unacceptable. Shocking. Okay, granted, my methods are not conventional. But who wants to conform with the status quo anyway? We want to be agents for change. The medical and the scientific problems of this world cannot be solved by skeptics whose horizons are narrowed by practical realities. We need women and men who dream of things that cannot be and ask why not. Professor Egon Dexter-Lucy, Karolinski Institute, Stockholm, Sweden. What I want to do is try to encourage you all to deconstruct and reformulate your views on psychiatry and madness, not based on impulse. I beseech you to transcend your impulses. Not based on anecdotes or sensationalism or prejudice, but on your capacity for compassion, on evidence, on unequivocal data, and on your sense of morality. Let's start off by debunking some myths. People with a mental illness are no more likely to be violent than anyone else unless they abuse drugs or alcohol. Dr. Sina Fargo is a consultant forensic psychiatrist and a senior lecturer in the Department of Psychiatry in the University of Oxford. And he collaborated with his counterparts in the Karolinski Institute in Stockholm, Sweden. And they examined the lives and behavior of 3,700 people with bipolar disorder and compared them with 37,000 people from the general population. And they concluded that people with a severe mental illness are no more likely to be violent than anyone else unless they abuse drugs or alcohol. This is unequivocal evidence published in the peer-reviewed journal Archives of General Psychiatry and featured on BBC News. Now, the Royal College of Psychiatrists have an award. It's called the Maurice Murkow Award, under the auspices of the Public Education Committee. And Dr. Maurice Murkow was the registrar for the Royal College of Psychiatrists. And funds were donated in his memory to create the Maurice Murkow Award. Trainees are invited to submit an exposition 1,000 words in length. And the aim is to improve the public understanding of psychiatry. It's a very prestigious award, and plus you get some dosh as well. I think like £1,000 or something. Now the winner of the 2010 Maurice Murkow Award was Dr. Cameron Ahmed for his paper entitled Beards and Bow Ties. And Dr. Ahmed is also a filmmaker, and what he's done is he's actually produced this really cool film, which I'm going to play to you all.
On a night out, when I tell someone I'm a psychiatrist, I'm guaranteed one of the following responses. Does that mean you know what I'm thinking? I'm a psychiatrist, not a psychic. I better be careful what I say around you then. The last thing I want to do right now is start analysing you. Aren't all psychiatrists crazy? Do all surgeons have massive hernias? Is that the same as a psychologist? No. Psychiatrists are doctors. I had to go to medical school for 6 years, where I was constantly humiliated for not knowing anything, had to examine people's testicles, and spent a fortune on Red Bull whilst cramming for exams. I once told a young lady that I was a psychiatrist. She gasped, turned, and literally ran away. Here I was hoping that becoming a doctor would make me more attractive to the opposite sex. Being a psychiatrist isn't easy. Our patients are often suffering terribly, and although we're a thick-skinned bunch, it can and does affect us. We get stick from the papers and the public when we fail to predict that a patient's about to do something dangerous, although we don't have a crystal ball. And other doctors discriminate against us, because apparently psychiatry is not real medicine, while society discriminates against our patients. Despite these annoyances, it is a fantastic job to have. Incredibly rewarding since you're helping those most in need of help. Challenging because you're trying to resolve complex personal problems. And never boring, as you don't know if the next patient you see will cry, shout at you, laugh with you, or try and hug you. Tomorrow, I may have to medicate a man who is terrified that his neighbours are trying to kill him. Then, negotiate with a young woman who's dangerously underweight and refusing to eat. Then I might reassure a teenager who's lost the will to live and try to find a shred of hope for him to hang on to. Important, stimulating, interesting work. As a psychiatrist, you spend plenty of time getting to know your patients, listening to their amazing stories and trying to understand their problems. This may sound familiar. I've only got 10 minutes for you. But doctor, I've got constipation, painful hip, a dodgy knee, and my wife wants to leave me. Pick one of those. So, all medical students must want to become psychiatrists, right? Wrong. The attitude of the public and other doctors towards psychiatrists has resulted in a recruitment crisis in the specialty. How can we address this? The image of psychiatry needs serious work. People still think we use straitjackets, although these went out about 50 years ago. When someone thinks of a psychiatrist, they generally imagine a man with a beard, a bow tie, and the nodding ability of a heavy metal headbanger. This, of course, is not true. Not that there's anything wrong with beards or bow ties, or heavy metal, but things have moved on. Psychiatrists are generally friendly, down-to-earth, and creative. Some of my colleagues are DJs, novelists, filmmakers, and musicians. The other image people have is of the nasty psychiatrist who enjoys being coercive and is itching to lock up the hero who isn't actually mentally ill, like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. This is a painful accusation. Like other doctors, psychiatrists are trying to help people in distress. We have to admit certain patients who present a risk to themselves or others. Depriving someone of their liberty weighs heavy on the conscience, and no psychiatrist takes it lightly. The image of psychiatrists combines with the stigma of having a mental illness to produce a major problem with seeking help. People don't want to see psychiatrists because they don't know what to expect, and they don't want to be labelled as a nutter. We all know it's wrong to be homophobic, racist, shortist, fattest, or prejudiced. But call a person with mental illness bonkers and you'll probably get a pat on the back. These are discriminatory terms which we need to take a stand against. Why is it that we distance ourselves from the mentally ill? We are sympathetic towards people with cancer, and mental illness can be just as debilitating. So why are we so cruel when we encounter someone with schizophrenia? Is it because we're afraid they may be violent? Alcohol is by far the biggest cause of violence, but rather than keep a distance, most of us can barely keep ourselves away from the pub. It could be because we tend to fear what we don't understand. If we understood mental illness better and accepted it as an illness like any other, we might be kinder to those who are going through it. This would hopefully result in people seeking help when they need it, rather than trying to cope by themselves, and when they can no longer cope, taking their own lives. The recruitment problem, the image of psychiatrists, the stigma of mental illness, and reluctance to seek help all seem tied together in some way. How can we solve this quadratic equation? Public education about mental illness and what psychiatrists do and don't do is a good place to start. Various campaigns have tried to bring about a change in attitude, but perhaps a more personal approach is needed. Perhaps we all need to think about our own attitude to psychiatrists and mental illness and challenge our preconceptions. Mental illness affects 1 in 4 people at some point in their lives, so you never know. It could be you that needs help. If and when you do, your friendly neighbourhood psychiatrist will be waiting, probably clean-shaven and definitely no bow tie.
I do have to make an addition. He might be wearing a Rolex as well. And one correction, it's not true, lads. Being a psychiatrist increases your pulling power. Okay, so Thomas Sydenham first developed the medical pathological model of disease, which assumes that diseases are associated with a necessary cause. Now, this model of disease has become synonymous with a model of disease based solely on demonstrably abnormal structure. So when you qualify, certainly in the UK, you rotate from specialty to specialty. And many newly qualified doctors will work in emergency medicine. And so when the nurse in charge, the sister in charge, asks you to assess a 67-year-old lady who's come in pyrexial at 39.2 degrees centigrade, she's not speaking in full sentences. She's expectorating green phlegm, desaturating on room air at 78%, and she smokes 40 cigarettes per day for 40 years. What's the diagnosis? Sorry? Anyone? Don't be shy. Pneumonia, yeah? It could be an LRTI. It could be an infective exacerbation of COPD. So, being the competent doctor that you are, you get IV access, you push some fluids in, do blood cultures. And what investigation are you going to request for? What kind of investigation do you think you'll request for? X-ray? Chest X-ray? And what do you see on the X-ray? Anyone heard of consolidation before? Yeah? So you see structural change, don't you? And so it's a disease, isn't it? You see structural change and therefore it's a disease, according to that model. Now, Thomas Sass has criticized psychiatry in general by suggesting that its diseases fail when that model is applied. Now, Smith and colleagues published a paper entitled In Search of Non-Disease in the British Medical Journal in 2002. And on the left there, you can see a list of conditions. And the more legitimate the disease is, the higher up the hierarchy it is. Can you see on the helm is malaria? Almost, I think 100% of respondents rated malaria to be a disease. Now, you can also see, so many respondents rated depression to be a non-disease. Can you see it's further down the list? Whereas alcoholism and schizophrenia fared somewhat better. There's schizophrenia further up there, and there's alcoholism. Now, there were some conditions rated as a real disease that have a characteristic pathology, although some don't. So epilepsy was rated as a real disease, although there's no structural change in epilepsy, in the brains of people who have epilepsy. Similarly, there were some conditions rated as non-disease, although their pathology is well described. So we have a fractured skull, which was rated as a non-disease. We have peptic ulcer disease, which is rated as a non-disease, although their pathology is well described. And the point I'm trying to make is, when does a condition become a disease? And sometimes I think it can be quite arbitrary. For me, a working definition is if the condition impairs occupational or social functioning. If your colleague is swinging on the chandeliers during a ward round, the alarm bell should start ringing. Also, there's context. So I'm originally from Lebanon, and we have 1 million Syrian refugees in Lebanon. If you oppose the Assad regime, then you are labeled or diagnosed with some kind of mental illness. I'm not going to delve too much into that, lest I launch into some kind of political discourse. So, it reminds me of this quote from John Dryden, and he said that great wits are sure to madness, near allied, and thin partitions their bounds divide. In other words, there's a very fine line between what is sane and what is insane, what is crazy and what is creative. And as I alluded to, who draws that line? Okay, So bipolar disorder, in essence, periods of prolonged and profound depression alternates with bouts of excessively elevated and or irritable moods known as mania. Now, between highs and lows, patients usually experience full remission. In the public mind, it is associated with notions of creative madness. I don't know if anyone recognizes this chap over here. That's Lord Byron. And he was regarded as one of the greatest British Romantic poets. He was very prolific. And he was truly a great poet. He got up to all kinds of shenanigans and debauchery. I think he was found roaming the streets of Cambridge with a bear one night. He had bipolar disorder. So, defining creativity. Most definitions of creativity emphasize novelty and originality balanced against utility. Now, this notion of there being an association between craziness and creativity is an ancient one. The famous Greek philosopher Socrates discussed madness as follows. If a man comes to the door of poetry untouched by madness, then he and his sane compositions never reach perfection, but are utterly eclipsed by the performances of the inspired madman. It's as if you want to be a great poet, a prerequisite is madness, according to Socrates. Now, in a contemporary study spearheaded by Professor Jamieson on living writers and artists, she revealed many overlapping moods, behavioral, and cognitive changes between hypomania and intense creative states. The psychologist J.P. Guilford identified the factors that were involved in creative thinking. Many of these relate to the changes that take place during hypomania as well. So we have word fluency, which is the ability to produce words, each containing a specific letter or combination of letters. We have associational fluency, which is the ability to produce synonyms from a given word in a limited period of time. We have expressional fluency, which is the production and rapid juxtaposition of phrases or sentences, which is important when you're engaged in public speaking. Which occupation or profession is public speaking important in? Politics, politicians, yes, and I will refer to that in the next slide. And we have ideational fluency, which is the ability to produce ideas that can fulfill certain requirements in a limited period of time. You get these features in creativity and in hypomania. Okay, so here are some famous people allegedly to have experienced bipolar disorder. Let's start off with some politicians and some ministers. Who's that chap there on your left? Winston Churchill, yes, voted by the British public to be the greatest Briton in the history of Britain, in British history. Who's that chap in the middle? Abraham Lincoln, yep, the American president, again, one of the greatest statesmen in US history. And despite being vertically challenged, this guy actually didn't do too bad, did he, for himself? Who's that French leader over there? Napoleon, yeah, conquered many of the known world during his time. Anyone heard of Napoleon syndrome before? Yeah, Google it. I think it's quite amusing, actually. Okay, poets. So who's that British poet over there on the left? Anyone recognize him? Anyone heard of Rudyard Kipling? Yeah, he's a famous, well, he's certainly famous in England. I don't know about Portugal. And here we have an American romantic poet. Edgar Allan Poe, Quoth the Raven Nevermore. And this is my favorite poet. He's a Welshman. Who said it? Somebody said it, yeah. Dylan Thomas. And then, any fans of Russian literature? Yeah? So who's the chap there on the left? Tolstoy, yes, author of War and Peace, the masterpiece. And here's a British writer, author of Oliver Twist. Anyone know who he is? Yeah? Charles Dickens. And does anyone recognize the American writer on the right? Now, I'll give you a clue. In the epigraph of his novel, he writes, "Then wear that gold hat, if that will move her. And if you can bounce high, bounce for her too, until she cries, 'Lover, gold-hatted high-bouncing lover, I must have you.'" It's the absurd lengths that a man will go to seduce a lady. The Great Gatsby? Fitzgerald, yes. And I prefer have you seen the latest one with Leonardo DiCaprio, the film? No, don't watch that one. Watch the one with Robert Redford. He's so smooth, isn't he? Okay, actors, who's that guy on the left? He's popular with the ladies, isn't he? Yes. Not to say that the man on the right isn't popular with the ladies. Who's he? Does anyone recognize him? Stephen Fry. And we describe him as a national treasure. And he is actually the creator of a documentary called The Secret Life of the Manic Depressive. Have you heard of it before? It's an award-winning documentary. It's accessible on YouTube. And what he does is he interviews people with first-hand experience of bipolar disorder. And he asks them the following question. Just imagine there was a buzzer over there. If you can press that buzzer and rid yourself of your manic depression, would you? Est-ce qu'il y a quelqu'un ici qui parle français? Voulez-vous prendre une tasse de café avec moi un peu plus tard? Ça marche bien comme ça? Quel est votre nom? Ça me fait grand plaisir de vous voir. I taught myself French in 4 weeks when I was manic. How was my French? À mon avis, je me débrouille en français. Oui? C'est très gentil de votre part. Merci mille fois. You get increased energy. You get reduced need for sleep when you're manic. You can teach yourself a new language in 4 weeks. What do you think the people said? Do you think they would press that buzzer? Would you press that buzzer? All of the people he interviewed said no. But the sample size was 7. There's a paper in the BMJ with a larger sample size, and a majority wouldn't hesitate to press the button. Why? Because mania is destructive. Hypomania is awesome. But mania is destructive. Okay, so one could argue, where would humankind be without bipolar disorder? Right? We have some of the greatest leaders in the history of humankind. Brilliant writers and poets. Where would we be without them? I don't think he has bipolar disorder. Now, there's a growing perception that science alone provides overall insufficient foundation for the holistic understanding of the interaction between health, illness, and disease. The Prince of Wales published a paper for a journal of the Royal Society of Medicine calling for wider perspectives on healthcare and for doctors to develop a healing empathy. And so the health humanities has emerged as a distinct entity in attempts to ameliorate the limitations of the provision of healthcare services. And it can be broadly described as the application of arts and literature to medicine. I'm not sure if anyone's ever heard of MedFest before. It's the International Medical Film Festival. And this is an example of the wide-ranging remit of the health humanities. The aim of MedFest is to explore the relationship between psychiatry and film. Have you heard of that film, The Aviator? Yeah, directed by Scorsese, starring DiCaprio. And the protagonist, the character is Howard Hughes, the American billionaire tycoon, who had obsessive compulsive disorder. Do you know what Scorsese did? He consulted an OCD specialist to ensure the accuracy of the portrayal of OCD. However, let's not forget that the film industry is a lucrative business, and they will exploit nudity and sensationalism to generate revenue. So sometimes, actually in the majority of films, the villain is portrayed to be some kind of violent, knife-wielding person with schizophrenia. And so that can actually perpetuate stigma. Anyone read this book? Yeah? The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat? The author emphatically argues in his preface that in order to restore the human subject at the center, the suffering, afflicted, fighting human subject, we have to deepen a case history into a narrative or tale. What is the suffering behind the symptom? Now, Carl Jung used the term the wounded healer as an archetypal dynamic to describe a phenomenon that may take place in the relationship between doctor and patient. Jung discovered the wounded healer archetype in relation to himself. For Jung, it is his own hurt that gives a measure of his power to heal. This is Kay Redfield Jamison. She's professor of psychiatry in Johns Hopkins in the US and professor of English literature in St. Andrews in Scotland. And she is the world authority on bipolar disorder. She has bipolar disorder. And this is her autobiographical narrative. And she is so eloquently able to describe the subjective experience of profound oscillations in mood. And critics say it's one of the best books published in 1995. If you have a reading list, I would recommend you put this book on your reading list. It only takes 2 hours to read. Okay, who's he? Anyone, any movie buffs in the audience? Okay. Anyone heard of To Kill a Mockingbird? Yeah, this is, the name of the actor is Gregory Peck. He garnered an Oscar for his performance. He was voted the greatest, the character Atticus Finch was voted the greatest hero in cinematic history. And Harper Lee, the Pulitzer Prize-winning novelist, said that in order to understand someone, you have to slip into their shoes and walk around in them. Now, the winner of the 2012 Maurice Markow Award was Dr. Claire Polkinghorne for her paper, Doctors Go Mad Too. And in the epigraph of that paper, she quotes Atticus Finch. And I'm going to read this out to you verbatim. As a psychiatrist, she had hoped that she was pretty good at empathizing with her patients. However, for the last 9 months of her life, she was taught more about mental illness than years of clinics, domiciliary visits, reading psychiatric literature. She was diagnosed with a major depressive disorder, detained under the Mental Health Act, and spent 6 weeks as an inpatient in a psychiatric ward. Now, if you read narratives from doctors who have lived experience of bipolar or of mental illness, not just bipolar disorder, but mental illness, a motive or recurrent theme is that they have become more empathetic. So in a way, those experiences can actually confer advantage. I mean, wouldn't you want to be seen by an empathetic doctor as opposed to a cold one? And don't forget what Prince Charles said. He wants doctors to develop a healing empathy. So again, would you press that button? Would you press that button? Something to reflect on. Okay, I'd like to think, oh, sorry. Oh, we went out after so go back there. So just be a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. For everything else, there's MasterCard. Right, okay. So I like to think this is the moment you've all been waiting for, but I'm perhaps flattering myself. I am flattering myself. This is my very own autobiographical narrative. How fun. For me, it is. Okay. Okay, so I was born in Belfast. Yes, there is a leprechaun lurking in me, as you may have gathered. I was raised in Dublin, and then I moved to the war-torn land of Lebanon. Now, I think a lot of you are too young to know about the brutal war, or maybe some of you know about it. There was a devastating conflict in Lebanon in the 80s. And the ramifications were far-reaching. So despite the fact that I arrived in 95, even by year 2000, the economical situation was terrible. And I woke up one morning, and my father said to me, "Son, it breaks my heart to say this to you, but I can't provide for you anymore." This is a doctor. And so we managed to scrape some money together, and we bought a one-way flight to England. And I'll never forget being in Rafiq Hariri Beirut International Airport. My mother was crying inconsolably. I was 17. I don't know what you were doing when you were 17. There's no heart like a mother's heart, and there's no mother's heart like my mother's heart. But Mama, what can I do? And so I returned to merry old England. I graduated top of the American high school I attended in Lebanon, and so the expectation was to walk into medical school. The reality was they put a mop in one hand and a bucket in the other, and they said, "Go clean some floors." That was in the morning, and during the day and at night, I would stack shelves. I was working 80 hours a week on minimum wage. The calluses on my hands were testament of the toil of my labor. I was completely independent on myself. I was providing for my mother. How did that make me feel? I was far removed from my family. I could not derive comfort from their immediate presence. I was naive. When I said good morning to people in my uniform as a janitor, I didn't understand why they wouldn't say good morning back to me. They used to call me Paki. It's just a derogatory term. A majority of the ethnic population is from Pakistan. I was feeling a little low. However, I was fully aware that I had been given a decent shot at life, which is more than what can be said for a majority of people on this planet. Britons from previous generations had made sacrifices on the trenches of Normandy so that I live a better life than them. And I'll be damned if I squandered that golden opportunity. In England, education is a birthright. I just had to focus, be patient, and work with integrity and assiduity. I enrolled into a sixth form college, and I took the A-level exams, which are like a pre-med equivalent. And I was still doing 50, 60 hours a week to keep a roof over my head and food in my stomach. And this was a constant threat to obtaining the necessary marks to enroll into university. However, despite these challenges, I received straight A's. And I matriculated into Manchester Medical School. And it reminds me of this quote by the Lawrence of Arabia. And the Lawrence of Arabia said that all men dream, but not equally. Those who dream by night, in the dusty recesses of their minds, wake in the day to find that it was vanity. But the dreamers of the day are dangerous men, for they may act their dreams with open eyes to make them possible. This I did. This is an Englishman on camelback. And if that's not the realization of a dream, then I don't know what is. I find that funny, but I laugh at my own jokes. Okay, so in 2006, reports started trickling in about a war that was being waged upon Lebanon. I woke up one morning to discover that the building my parents live in was reduced to rubble. How do you react to that? Reports of thousands of civilians killed overnight. May I ask where you are from, sir? Where are you from, sir? May I ask? Imagine waking up one morning and your hometown was bombed. I mean, you've never perhaps even had to consider that, right? You don't have to answer that question, but maybe it's just something to reflect on. And if I may share with you, I would say to myself, it's the kind of thing that would never happen to me. I would never lose my mind or go mad. But how do you know, unless you've been through those experiences, how you would react? How do you know? How can you be so sure? And so it was around this time that I noticed the following. I was dreaming dreams that no mortal ever dared to dream before. I had grandiloquent ideas. I had racing thoughts, increased energy, reduced need for sleep. Does anyone know what I mean by amorous activity? It's a euphemism. And the bridges were burning quite literally in Lebanon. And I was burning bridges in the metaphorical sense. And in many ways, it's reminiscent of what happened in the kingdom of heaven in the Holy Land recently. Were you here for Dr. Sui Yang's inspirational talk? Sui is my friend. Diego contacted me and asked me if he can bring along, and so I contacted her. Sui is a good friend of mine. We call her the Angel of Beirut. She occupies a very special place in my heart. C.S. Myers in The Lancet said everyone had a breaking point. Weak or strong, cowardly or courageous, war frightened everyone witless. And you know what? Sometimes an appropriate response to reality is just to go insane. And in the immortal oratory of the villain in the motion picture, The Dark Knight, insanity is much like gravity. All it takes is a little push. Now, the aftermath of mania is invariably melancholia. But before I move on to that, I was actually in Boston when I had my manic episode in 2006. I had an interview with Harvard Medical School. And there was a demonstration. 500 people showed up. It was against the war in the Lebanon, in Boston Government Center. And the event organizers were introducing the speakers. This is a professor from MIT. This is a professor from Harvard. It might be difficult to believe, but I'm actually exuberant at the moment. Can you imagine what I'm like when I'm manic? And in Boston, I was manic out of my mind. And when you're manic, flights of fancy and notions of romanticism compel you. You are beholden to the spur. And so I remember, I vividly recall striding resolutely to the center of the spacious stage, sweeping the event's organizers aside with brusque disdain. And then with the searing eloquence of a seasoned preacher, declaiming from his pulpit, I bellowed to the audience, Great Britain's favorite poem. If you can keep your mind when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for the doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting or being lied about, don't deal in lies. Or being hated, don't give way to hating. But don't look too good nor talk too wise. Now, if you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same. If you can make one heap and risk it all on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginning and never breathe a word of your loss. If you can force your heart and your nerve and your sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and hold on when there's nothing left within you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk to crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings and not lose that common touch, if neither loving foes nor friends can hurt you, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the world and everything that is in it, and which is more, you will be a man, my son. Now, I actually said it with a lot more emotion in the US, and it was a spectacle. I'll tell you why it was a spectacle. Because in the US, a passionate Arab is a threat to national security until proven otherwise. So the aftermath of mania is invariably melancholia. I started to sink into the murky depths of a depressive illness. I'm fortunate. I've got 30 papers to my name. I've given this lecture to 15 medical schools in the UK. There was a lecture circuit in the US. I was blessed to lecture in Toronto, New York, New Hampshire, and Portland. I'm here now. What a blessing it is to be here. I'm going to Italy. I'm flying to Beirut on Monday. I'm lecturing in Edinburgh. I'm going to be lecturing in London. I am so blessed and I'm so fortunate. But when I was depressed, I couldn't even read a sentence from a paragraph. You can't concentrate. It's called, the term is pseudo-dementia. You just can't concentrate. Feelings of hopelessness, worthlessness, and guilt. Reduced energy. You can't get out of bed. You can't function at all. You feel horrible, low, all the time. There's no joy in your life, anhedonia. There's no hope for the future. I was ostracized by my so-called friends. Social exclusion had a deleterious effect on me. If you want to know who your friends are, don't sign into Facebook. Have a manic episode. You'll find out who your friends are. And I was a student. You know what they did? They forced me, the university, to interrupt my studies. They severed my student loan, which was the only source of income. What were the consequences? No family I could go stay with in England. I was providing for my family in Lebanon. Lebanon has been obliterated. Don't forget, this is during the war. I was homeless. I was sleeping on the streets of Manchester. These were the toughest times of my life. I was sinking deeper and deeper into the darkness. And in extremis, I developed suicidal behavior. But I resisted the impulse to act upon these thoughts because for me, Islam was a protective factor. And in Islam, suicide is forbidden. So about social exclusion, it reminded me of this quote from this film, The 25th Hour. Champagne to my real friends and real pain to my sham friends. When I was depressed, nobody would reach out to me, nobody would call me. Now my phone won't stop ringing. I recovered in 2010 and I've been in full remission ever since, without having to take any medication, but I have regular appointments with my psychiatrist. And I commenced my appointment as research fellow with Cambridge University in England, which is a difficult competitive post to obtain. And I was very, very pleased. I was chuffed to bits. You know, I feel these life experiences have made me realize just how fortunate I am relative to so many others. The outcome for those who have bipolar disorder can be tragic. We know that suicide is overrepresented in this population. As I said, I'm originally from the Lebanon. We have 1 million Syrian refugees in Lebanon now. I was there 2 months ago. I forayed into the refugee camp and I met 3 children, younger than 10 years of age. Parents were killed in an explosion. They were orphans. And you know what? Despite their tragedy, they had these broad smiles adorning their innocent faces, and they are my heroes. I didn't get it so bad. And you know what the women are doing to exist? Survival sex. There's no other way to feed their children. They're selling their bodies. It's a public health issue. I didn't get it so bad. And I'm in the process of establishing a health partnership with our group in Cambridge University and a mental health care provider in the refugee camps in Lebanon. And we're going to utilize telepsychiatry to assess and treat the wounded. The physician who doctors himself has a fool for a patient. Sir William Osler. You are not the best person to plan your assessment, treatment, and referral. I urge you all to engage with the mental health services if you detect the early warning signs. What are they? You might get into an argument. You might be more argumentative. Why? Because you're irritable. Why are you irritable? Because you're depressed. You might be falling asleep during this lecture theatre. Why? Because my talk is boring. Or because you have irregular sleeping patterns. Because you have poor sleep hygiene as a result of depression. I urge you all. Mental illness is like physical illness. Diabetes has treatment, insulin. Depression has treatment, antidepressants, talking therapies. Engage with the services. It's overrepresented. There are people in this room right now. You haven't had it now. One in four of us will develop a mental health challenge at some point in our lives. I was one of them, and I recovered. And if I can recover, you can recover too. Register with a GP. Up to 2/3 of doctors in the UK haven't done this. Countering stigma and negative views, as Dr. Ahmed said, starts off with the individual by challenging our own prejudices and preconceptions. Now, for those of you experiencing mental distress in any of its many forms, I know the world can be a dark and lonely place, I know, but don't give up hope. Because with the right intervention, you can recover, function occupationally and socially, you can realize your dreams, you can find happiness, you might even find love. And I will do everything in my power to take a firm stand against the stigma associated with mental illness. Now is not the time to be quiet. Now is not the time to be reticent. Action over apathy. You can be the agent of change. Professor Jamieson said, an artist survives, describes, and transforms psychological pain into an experience with more universal meaning so that his or her own journey can become one that others better protected can take. And so I composed my very own poem. And I usually take my jacket off for this. But I'll keep my shirt on. Doesn't mean I haven't kept my shirt on in the past. And when I give out the feedback forms, one of the students in Bristol said to take my shirt off. And she was tempting me. It's called The Conflagration in My Wake. Regard the conflagration in my wake. An inexorable inferno burning bridge after bridge. Emancipate me from the shackles of bipolar. Release me, I beseech thee, from the indignations of my past. Take up the quill, I will, and relate my tale of woe I shall, but wait, there is an incandescent silver lining. Was it not the mystic Khalil Gibran who proclaimed, the more melancholy carves into your being, the more jubilation it can contain, and even the beauty of birth will leave its own scars. So adorn my face then, not with a masquerade, but with a smile that never fades, and patient no more, but healer now I am. And off into the kingdom of the sick I shall foray, with lineament and manner born out of experience as my instruments of healing. And when I behold my neighbor's gaze, she whispers unto me, you are a good doctor, Dr. Hankir. An unbridled joy gushes forth from my heart. It's not me who heals you, my dear, but it's you who heals me. One question. Does having mental health challenges mean that you can't realize your dreams? And from being a janitor to being homeless, in 2013, the Royal College of Psychiatrists conferred upon me the Foundation Doctor of the Year, which marks the highest level of achievement in psychiatry in the United Kingdom. If I can recover and realize my dreams, so can you. Thank you. Get a standing ovation. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ahmed. I'd like to open now the floor to maximum of 2 questions, if anyone wants. Yeah, sure.
I'll be around if they want to ask me. I'll be around. You know.
I can start a quick question. It was an amazing speech. Just a quick question. Do you think that this is a problem that is happening? Do you think that there is a awareness from international organizations about this problem between doctors and students on problems on mental health?
I think it's starting to change. I think we're becoming more accepting of doctors and medical students who have mental health challenges. The World Authority on Stigma is Professor Patrick Corrigan. He's based in Chicago. He conducted a meta-analysis and outcome studies on the stigma associated with mental health challenges. And do you know what the most effective way of reducing discrimination was? Not education, social contact. In other words, the people who have these experiences have the power to reduce stigma by coming out proud, because they're normal human beings. What we're doing is dehumanizing them. But when you do social contact, it worked with homosexuality. Coming out proud reduced the stigma. We have data to support this. And we have data now. There's a randomized controlled trial in the British Journal of Psychiatry supporting the efficacy of coming out proud. Now, coming out proud isn't for everyone. You know, you have to make a decision between disclosure and concealment. But I think, now I'm on this is my quest, you know. The president of the Royal College of Psychiatrists, Sir Simon, he knows I'm here. The president of the World Psychiatry Association, Professor Dinesh Bogra, he knows I'm here. In the UK, the GMC has advised medical schools to create an environment in which mental health is openly spoken about, so we can try to reduce the stigma surrounding it. Thank you.
Yeah, you go.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
First of congratulations for your presentation. It was very inspiring.
Thank you so much.
I would like to know, because you can rely only on your, the bipolar patients cannot rely only on the maniac phase to progress and to create and to be more of students. And you reach a stage of you said, I don't know the word.
Impasse, yeah.
Yes. How do you reach that stage without medication, and how can you manage to be always so so progressing?
So productive. Okay, thank you for your question. May I answer it?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's the point.
Bow down to the quiz master, although this is the quiz. Moving swiftly on. So, resilience. And I spoke with Victoria about this exercise. It's so important. It's cliche, but a healthy body is a healthy mind. I was actually 30 kilograms heavier. I have a paper in the BMJ. You can just PubMed me if you want. I was a personal tutor for the Prince of Saudi Arabia. So when you're the personal tutor, his uncle is king. And they give you unlimited room service in a hotel, a 5-star hotel in Mayfair, London, Oh, we started, all the boys would come over, it was awesome, we had a lot of fun. Did a lot of damage as well. So I was quite big, a big boy, you know, I was bigger. And then my productivity plummeted. Then I said, you know, it has to change. You know, 50% of healthcare workers in England are overweight or obese. 50%. We're supposed to be setting the example. So now I do like 500 push-ups a day, you know, I run 4 or 5 times a week, you know, and it's great. And yeah, I can't emphasize that much. A healthy body is a healthy mind. That will make you more resilient. And there are other ways as well. For me, religion works. For me, Islam is, I know it's not a good time to be Muslim at the moment because of all of what's happening in the world, you know. But you know what, here's a story for you. Because I was invited to lecture in Manhattan in New York. And you know the New Yorkers, they experienced trauma on an enormous scale. So how can I be sure how the people of New York will receive someone who describes himself as Muslim? And you know what the professor said to me the following day? The professor who invited me? He sent me an email, he said, you know what, the people of New York were inspired by you. So there's hope. Don't ever give up hope. Hope is audacious. Ding dong.
Dr. Ahmed, thank you so much. I think that now it's time for us to go to the lunch time. Dr. Ahmed,
Sorry, yes.
Dr. Ahmed will be around, and Agostinho as well. So if one thing, I'm so sorry, I have to tell you. Dr. Francisco George was supposed to come here, but given the Legionella outbreak that is ongoing currently in Lisbon,